Well, hello, fellow wanderers, and welcome back to my space. I got a little coffee I'm sipping on. If you need to go get yourself a cup, go ahead and pause and do just that. Today, I want to talk about deconstruction as it refers to deconstructing your food. Deconstructing your food. You've probably heard a lot about this. You know, if you've been if you've made it this far into my videos, you're probably on a similar journey as I am, and you're familiar with the word deconstruction as it applies to or refers to deconstructing your faith, deconstructing Christianity, deconstructing your religion. But I want to talk about deconstructing food. I've been introduced to deconstructing food recently. This and if you don't know what deconstructed food is, you probably do. But just in case you don't, it's where you take a familiar and established dish and you present its core flavors, its core ingredients in a radically different form, or maybe a radically different temperature, or a radically different texture. I've been introduced to two dishes that I like lately that I really enjoy is deconstructed sushi and deconstructed pizza. Basically, deconstructed sushi or a sushi bowl is where they take all the ingredients of a sushi and it's kind of just in a bowl that you eat it that way. And then of course deconstructed pizza is all of the pizza ingredients, typically sans crust, all the pizza ingredients in a bowl. I didn't realize too that I have actually, for all of my life, whenever you typically go to a diner, eating deconstructed cheeseburgers, because the burger would come out on the plate with the cheese on top, all nice and melty, and then you would have the lettuce, tomato, onion, and all the crispy ingredients on the side, and with the bun. And then you're in charge of, as the diner, you are in charge of reconstructing that burger before you put it in your face. So, in thinking about deconstructed food, I did a little bit of diving into why people deconstruct their food. For some, chefs deconstruct their food as simply a new way to experience the dish. They want their diner to appreciate the individual textures and the individual flavors that might be missed when all of that stuff is together in the dish. And in doing so, sometimes it kind of awakens the senses as the diner is forced to kind of reconstruct the dish from their own tasting memory, as it engages their mind as well as their palate as they're picking up the different pieces and putting them in their mouth. It allows them, gives them space to just fully appreciate the individual flavors and textures. It's almost like they're eating a totally different dish, if you will, experiencing the different flavors and the different textures that you may not fully enjoy when all of that stuff is put together in its traditional sense. Some chefs deconstruct their food for personal and practical reasons. There are some chefs that will just deconstruct the food because they want to challenge the traditional way of doing the dish. That dish has been made that way for hundreds of years. I'm going to challenge that traditional way of doing it, and I'm going to deconstruct it and kind of serve it in a different way. And not only to challenge traditional ways of preparing the dish, but to showcase their creativity. I'm just going to do this a little different, showcase their creativity. Sometimes deconstructing food is to maintain the integrity and texture of the stuff that's on the plate. Again, going back to that cheeseburger, sometimes they will serve a cheeseburger deconstructed to keep the crispy ingredients crispy, to keep that nice hot juicy burger hot, to keep things from getting wilted, to keep it's just all deconstruct, keep the bread from getting soggy, and so to maintain the integrity of the dish, ensuring that it's just good and fresh when you put it together right before you put it in your mouth. Another reason food is deconstructed is for the dietary needs and preferences of the person that's eating. So for those that have food allergies, intolerances like gluten or dairy or specific diet plans, diners are able to easily omit or substitute any of the components in the dish that they are about to consume. Thinking back to that pizza bowl, on the diet, the diet that I was on called that I needed to avoid things like crust, but it was just helping me lose some weight during that time. So So in order to avoid things like crust and still get my pizza on, I would have that deconstructed pizza in a bowl to help me. And then for those that just can't have things, like crust, whatever allergy and intolerance they might have, it allows them to get their pizza fix without hurting themselves, without hurting their body. So you think about how we have been deconstructing our entire lives. I think about when I was a boy, I had little radios and little remote control cars and robots and things like that. I tell you, Radio Shack was one of my favorite places to go growing up. Boo, I miss Radio Shack. But anyways, when my toy would stop working, I would deconstruct it. I would tear that thing apart, and I would figure out what is going on inside my toy that is keeping it from working correctly. I wouldn't throw the whole thing out. I would typically just deconstruct it, tear it apart, figure out what piece was broken, figure out what piece needed to be fixed, what piece, if there was some rust or corrosion that needed to be removed, or some part that needed to be replaced, or whatever it might be that was affecting the whole. And then I would put the whole thing back together in hopes that it would be in a better shape than when I first tore it apart. You think about mechanics. Every time you take your vehicle to a mechanic, when it's not working properly, they deconstruct it. They tear into it, they tear it apart, figure out what's wrong. You don't just throw the whole thing away. You deconstruct it, you tear it apart, and figure out why it's not working, and either remove that thing that's got it clogged, or fix that thing that's broken, or replace that thing that needs to be replaced. So then it gets all put back together, hopefully in better shape than when it was originally found. So when deconstructing, it's usually for the purpose of understanding why something isn't working out right. To, when it comes to those kind of things, to lay out all the pieces, to figure out sometimes we even deconstruct it to figure out why it is working right. Maybe we want to get to know something a little bit better. We want to know what's the magic behind the curtain. And so we will deconstruct it to figure out, how is this thing working right? So we deconstruct to find out why it's not working right. And sometimes out of curiosity, we'll deconstruct something to figure out why it's working, how it works. So then you think about deconstruction by way of religion, in the context of religion. It seems to be a buzzword. As you know, it's a buzzword in religion right now. Some religious people think that it's demonic, that it's of the devil. Some people think that it's a sign of the end times, because there's this huge falling away because of deconstruction. People are leaving the church. Is this the sign of the end times? Some people are afraid of it for that very reason because, more often than not, I feel, don't have any numbers to back it up, but I feel that more often than not, when somebody deconstructs their faith, when somebody deconstructs their religion, a little sip of coffee here, it leads to them leaving their faith. And so that word freaks the religious people out. Oh, we're getting ready to lose some more people again. Or some people think that deconstruction is simply a fad. It's simply a trend that will eventually die out. But many Christians, I don't think Christians realize that deconstruction is necessary to be a good Christian. I don't think that Christians realize that their Bible, it's funny to hear Christians talk about deconstruction, and they just think it's just evil, wicked thing that we should not do and should avoid it at all costs. But if they really think about it, deconstruction is necessary to be a good Christian according to the Christian's Bible, because the Christian's Bible told them so. Deconstruction in literary analysis, it refers to the process of uncovering hidden assumptions and questioning the certainty of the meaning in the texts. So think about the Bible tells Christians to do that very thing. It tells them to study, to uncover the hidden assumptions, study and question the certainty of meaning in the texts. It tells us to study so that we will rightly handle the word of truth. It told us, the Apostle Paul praised the Berean Christians, that they, after hearing his message, would go back to their homes and study the scriptures to make sure that what he was saying was the truth. The Bible told us that we needed to be ready to give a logical defense to anyone who asked us of the hope that was within us. So you can't do any of those things without deconstructing your faith, without deconstructing the sermons, without deconstructing the passages from the Bible. In order to be a good Christian, you had to deconstruct because the Bible told me so. So then how did deconstructing Christianity lead me away? Good question. Let's take it back to the food analogy. Christianity eventually became chili mac for me. And let me explain. There are different versions of chili mac out there. There are versions that consist of chili con carne with noodles. There is chili con carne with mac and cheese. There is spaghetti that's topped with chili. Some people will throw an egg on top. I do believe that the military has an MRE version of chili mac. And I also believe that NASA has a freeze-dried space version of chili mac as well. So a lot of different versions for a lot of different palates and a lot of different situations and scenarios. Sounds like Christianity, doesn't it? There are over 35,000 different versions, different flavors, different forms of Christianity out there, all to appease a variety of diets and palates and preferences. And so, just like Christianity, if you were to deconstruct chili mac, there is a point in which you can deconstruct chili mac where it ceases to be chili mac. So if someone presents to me chili mac and I deconstruct it and I remove the chili, it ceases to be chili mac. Depending on what you used with the chili, I'm either left with a bowl of spaghetti or I am left with a bowl of noodles or a bowl of mac and cheese, or maybe just the egg. So at some point of deconstruction, chili mac ceases to be chili mac. We take it a step further. I have a nephew who just likes buttered noodles. That's it. No sauce, no cheese, no nothing. Just likes buttered noodles. So there is absolutely no form of chili mac in existence out there that comes close to satisfying his palate for buttered noodles. So chili mac Christianity. A lot of versions out there to satisfy a variety of palates and spiritual dietary needs. So many of us, in the same way, deconstructed Christianity so much to the point that what remained on our plate was no longer Christianity. Now, there may have been a few good parts left on the plate. You know, for my nephew, he deconstructs chili mac to get it down to what he wants. So he might remove the chili and the sauce and the egg and the cheese and the this and that, and is left with the noodles, the only good thing that he sees out of it. So some of us, in the same way, deconstructed Christianity that what remained on the plate, there may have been a few good parts left on the plate. But I think for most of us, after we moved all of the bad parts, what was left didn't look like Christianity anymore. I want to talk about maybe two of the bad parts that were removed. The shitty eisegesis and the lack of exegesis. So let's talk about the shitty eisegesis for a minute. Eisegesis is that reading one's own ideas and one's own beliefs and one's own biases into the text. Exegesis is the idea of fully understanding the text's original meaning by considering the historical and cultural and linguistic and literary context in order to extract from that passage what the author's intended meaning was. And so, after we removed all the bad parts of our chili mac Christianity, the shitty eisegesis and the lack of exegesis, what remained just was in no way, shape, or form Christianity anymore. When we took away all of the mythology, the false claims, the contradictions, the destructive narrative, such as the man-made concept of sin, this destructive narrative of a sin nature, the man-made concept of hell, the lies, the toxicity. Every time you go into a church, you've got a different pastor interpreting it a different way. Again, back to the shitty eisegesis, and then the lack of exegesis. All the things that were written for a particular people group, we throw it 2,000 years into the future and try to apply it to modern church, modern Christianity, which has just left us in a whole heap of mess. You get the point. You understand where I'm going with this. So once we scraped all of the shit off the plate, there is not, for me, there is not a single version of Christianity out there that comes close to serving what is left on the plate. Chili Mac Christianity, after deconstructing it, it ceased to be Chili Mac. What was left on the plate was not Chili Mac. And there was no restaurant out there that could any way, shape, or form serve up that version and still call it Chili Mac. And so at that point, you leave. Think about my nephew who likes buttered noodles. If he goes to, is it Skyline Chili? I think there's a Skyline Chili. If that's the name of a restaurant, I believe, or something there. If you think about a restaurant chain that serves Chili Mac, and they are very limited on their substitutions, as far as what they serve. And my nephew goes there and he wants a plate of buttered noodles, and they don't serve it because we only serve Chili Mac here. We only serve Chili Mac here. You can pick from all the lists of different versions of Chili Mac, but we're not going to serve you buttered noodles because that's not what we serve here. We serve Chili Mac here. So then at that point, my nephew would never return to Chili Mac restaurants because there's not a single Chili Mac restaurant out there that can serve up what that can serve up the buttered noodles that satisfies his palate. And in the same way, then, after we got done scraping all the crap off the plate, what was left on the plate, what was non-toxic, what was healthy, what was good, what was right, what was truth. There's not a single church restaurant out there that could come close to serving what was left on our plate. And so we had to leave, so we don't go back to those restaurants anymore. But I want to encourage you to not stop there, because when you are served a deconstructed dish, it is you who are in control of the reconstruction process. I'm going to take a little sip of coffee here. You're in control. Now, for the sake of your existential health, I believe it's important that you reconstruct a new dish. A healthy dish that feeds and nourishes your existential health. And I want to also encourage you to not just simply take the next dish that is served to you by a self-proclaimed existential health guru who tries to hand you something, the next author, the next teacher, the next whatever that tries to hand you a dish. Don't just take it and gobble it up, because you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get sucked back into another, albeit slightly polished, turd version of spirituality. And so I want to encourage you to be your own sous chef, to build your own dish that includes ingredients that align with who you are, that align with what you need, a dish that feeds and nourishes you. And, oops, if at some point something doesn't feel right, something isn't setting right with your existential belly is kind of rumbling a little bit, something just ain't working right deep down inside your gut, then guess what? Tear that dish apart again. Figure out what's not working. Figure out, what kind of intolerance, existential intolerance, that you're having with an ingredient that you threw in your dish, deconstruct it again, remove, replace, substitute, put that dish back together. Deconstruction and reconstruction is a cycle. It's not a one-time thing. The deconstruction that led you out of chili mac Christianity is a deconstruction that you should maintain for the rest of your life. Constantly evolving, growing, expanding. And as you evolve and grow and expand, the things that once served you will no longer serve you. The things you once had a taste for, you will no longer have a taste for. The things that once help you may at some point hinder you. So stay open to the idea of deconstructing and reconstructing your dish as being a constant and beautiful and even fun cycle. Your existential health diet must evolve with your existential health needs. Let me say that again. Your existential health diet and what you're consuming, it must evolve with your existential health needs. Therefore, deconstruction and reconstruction is a necessary cycle of life. Before I let you go today, I do want to plug my shirt that I'm wearing here today. It says formerly fundamentalist, formerly mental. It's one of the many creations that I've put together at likeismyreligion.com. By purchasing a t-shirt from there, you will help support existential health. If you want to go to likeismyreligion.com, talk a little bit more about that there as well. But I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that today's discussion will be helpful to you in your journey, and I look forward to hanging out with you again in the near future. Take care.